Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see many of you here this afternoon, this evening, this morning, wherever we might be joining from. We've got many continents represented this afternoon, this evening. So it's great to see you all, great to have you here with us. My name's Paul Campbell. I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of Glasgow, but my day job is a senior leader at a school in Hong Kong, where I'm joining you from. Benjamin is on the call as well. We're joining both from Hong Kong at midnight, the day after you now. So we're actually into Thursday already, but delighted to be with you. And I'll share a little bit about each of our presenters today. And what I want to emphasize as well is that we're looking forward to this really discursive event. There'll be a chance to connect with each other, to share insights and perspectives as well. Just to highlight as well, this session is being recorded. So if you're joining us live, great to see you, and we're looking forward to chatting with you. If you're joining us via YouTube or via the link to the recording, equally delighted that you're able to engage as well. And we hope to be able to catch up with you at another point as well. So I'm going to start just very briefly by sharing my screen, which hopefully you will all be able to see in 1 second. And you should be able to see this now. Okay, any issues, then do let me know in the chat. But again, welcome. For those of you that are new to BELMAS, welcome to this BELMAS 50th anniversary event. So you might have seen, or you might have read already, that BELMAS is celebrating their 50th year anniversary this year. And part of that is through hosting a series of Ignite sessions. Now, this is not something that's, I guess, new for BELMAS. There have been an established community of those with an interest in educational leadership, but of course, those that are wanting to support quality education through effective leadership and management. So you can find out more about BELMAS on the website, but I think all I need to share with you today is that you're going to see how exciting and vibrant a community BELMAS actually is through the event we're going to enjoy together today as well. If you are tweeting, please do use the hashtag BELMAS50 and share any of your thoughts or insights or questions as we go through the session today. And again, we're delighted to have you with us. Now, the purpose of the session today was a chance to connect with those that perhaps are engaging in postgraduate study. You might be contemplating a master's or a doctoral degree. You might have completed one already, looking at your future in terms of as an early career researcher or future opportunities to publish. And what we hope the presentations, but also the breakout room discussions today, what we hope that offers is a chance to connect with each other, to share tips and ideas, and actually some insights into the possibilities of what can come as a result of doctoral and postgraduate study, and actually the impact and possibilities beyond that. And we'll conclude the session today as well with thinking about what some of the possibilities and the opportunities of being part of the BELMAS community could also offer as well. So I'm delighted to introduce each of our presenters today. I'll give them a chance to say hello as we actually go into each presentation, but a huge welcome and thank you to Nidal, who's joining us from Bath in the UK, and Ruth, who's joining us from Germany. Benjamin is joining us from Hong Kong, and Andrew is joining us from Kenya. So thank you so much for contributing to today's session. Great to see you all as well. And we'll hear more from you as we move into the presentations too. So we're just doing a brief introduction just now. We're going to move straight into hearing from Nidal and Ruth. Each presenter will speak for about 5 or 6 minutes, just sharing some of their insights from their doctoral journey and some of the connections they've made to that. If you do have any questions, please do use the chat function. And of course, we'll move into breakout rooms as well. So you'll be able to actually go in, maybe if you want to go into a room with Nidal or into a room with Ruth, or if you've got no preference, you can go into any room. And that'll be a chance to maybe talk a little bit further about some of the points they raise, or just a chance to connect and hear a little bit more about the experiences they've shared as well. We'll then come back and we'll hear from Benjamin, and we'll also hear from Andrew and their insights from their journeys and their doctoral experiences too. And then again, we'll move into breakout rooms, and then we'll come back together and we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes just to synthesize some of the ideas we've been talking about, any final questions and possibilities for some continued engagement for those that are interested in connecting further after today's Ignite session. So to start us off, it's just a huge welcome, first of all, to Nidal. We're delighted to have you here with us, Nidal. I'm going to stop sharing screen and I'm going to pass the virtual platform over to you. First of all, thank you for sharing, and we're looking forward to hearing your insights, Nidal.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks everyone for joining us. I'm really delighted to be here with you today and to share my doctoral story. I'm going to share my screen. All right, I hope you can all see it. Well, my name is Nidal Al Haj Sleiman, and I'm from Lebanon. I'm currently working on my doctoral research at UCL Institute of Education. This is my fourth year, so hopefully my last year. Before starting heading to my doctoral journey, I just want to link myself or introduce my link to the field. Before starting my doctoral research in leadership and management, I've worked as a principal of an international school in Qatar, and before that as a deputy in a public school. So I've been immersed in the field for quite some time before starting this journey in 2018. So my topic is leading international schools. It focuses on the practice, the development, and the social impact of leadership. And I'm going to take you briefly through a journey of my research, mainly my theoretical framework, a little bit on the challenges I've faced on the way and some of the opportunities I benefited from and what I've learned through that. So I have to say that when I first started, I wouldn't really know how to phrase this, but now I do define my research as an interdisciplinary project. And what that means is that I was constantly interested in the social impact of leadership. And I always viewed leadership as a social practice, but that was really just like scratching the surface. It took me quite some time to really explore each of these areas before deciding that, yes, I want to explore leadership and analyze or answer my research questions through all of these three frameworks. So I started, of course, by exploring educational leadership theory and practice and looking at how they connect and they feed and inform the practice of leading schools. But at the same time, I looked at leadership development and mainly I leaned on the work of Hallinger and also Kim and Ju's framework, which viewed leaders as adult learners and adult educators. So I was mainly interested in how leaders grow themselves and how they help others grow in the school. And at the same time, I was exploring the field or the schools that I am calling fields in this project through Bourdieu's theory and his concepts, mainly field, capital, and habitus. So the interconnection of all of these theories is what helped me dig deeper into understanding what leaders do actually and how they do, and what is it that they call leadership and we as researchers or practitioners really call leadership. So starting with education leadership, and I think this is just one message that I would like to pass across this presentation. So I started with choosing some kind of literature, mainly focused on Jeff Southworth's work and model in learning-centered leadership, as well as Hallinger's contextualization of leadership work. And I started with that, and that was really fitting very well with my research questions. But as I started collecting my data, I noticed that my data has been bringing for some important and new dimensions, whereas my theoretical framework didn't really fit very well into that. So I had to go back and revisit my theoretical foundation. And I started looking for new frameworks. And I figured out that Robinson's theory was really fitting very well into the interdisciplinary approach of my project. So I expanded into that. I'm going to also discuss a little bit about the challenges I've seen through the process. So mainly framing the study and particularly choosing the context, especially that I was planning to look at two countries, Qatar and England, and looking at what approaches to do and how to sample or how to choose my participants, my sampling frame, what tools and how to test my tools and how to present my results. That process of constantly making my decisions wasn't quite a straightforward path, I have to say, but it did work very well at the end. And the second one was really engaging with the literature. So finding a direction, finding a position where I ground my research within the wider field of educational leadership and management. And especially also that I do come from a different place. I do not come from a Western country, whereas the main predominant literature in the field where I study and do my research is mainly Western literature. So I allow myself to expand a little bit further and try to learn about how leadership is viewed and framed in different contexts. And that was quite informative. I also had to look a little bit about not only for the recent and most widely cited research, but also looking at some of the historical narratives and the trends, because probably some of the older research on leadership has been associated or probably reflected some political and social trends that have been informative for my research, whereas that wasn't the plan initially, but I did find myself digging quite a little bit into some historical narratives. And then recruiting participants amidst the pandemic was definitely not the easiest task. So I had to pull out the best of my communication skills in order to really convince them in a period which was really overwhelming. That went well, not as planned, but I did secure a decent size of participants, which helped me really validate my findings. And the last one was maintaining that alignment of data findings with research goals, because data can sometimes take you into different places. I was doing mixed methods, and my qualitative part was based on case studies, and the case studies included interviews with different levels of people in the school, starting with principals, middle leaders, senior leaders, teachers, and high school students. So that wasn't very easy. At the same time, it was so rich and allowed me to understand the depth of leadership and what it means to really interact with teachers and students and lead your work while at the same time maintain the plan through which leaders lead schools. The other part was a quantitative tool, which was a survey that included about 50 participants. The plan was definitely to go beyond that, but this is what I got. And I think my data really allowed me to look at a wider perspective of leaders, but at the same time to explore the multiple layers of leadership experience in international schools. So I'm really satisfied at the end. I'm finally at the stage where I'm analyzing and trying to start a discussion phase. And I think that is where I've learned from all these challenges. I think the lessons learned were quite very meaningful. So opportunities, I just wanted to comment to those students who are still in the doctoral research process. Sessions like these are priceless. So I've benefited quite a lot from networking, speaking with others, and listening to the experience of others, even the rough roads, the rough paths, the mistakes made, the difficulties, and a lot of that, because the doctoral journey can actually be isolating at times because nobody else is really exploring your own topic. So you are alone, you are making your decisions. And I think collegiality at this stage would be very, very helpful. And then I just also wanted to share two quite quick tips. So first, it is all right to make some revisiting or decisions about revisiting frameworks, revisiting decisions made earlier, because doctoral journeys are quite maybe minimum 3 to 5 years or 6 years sometimes. So things do not stay the same. When I first started, there was no pandemic, but I found myself really thrown amidst a very turbulent time. So I had to adjust and adapt and revisit a lot of the decisions and redesign my tools, and that was it. And the second one is that it is always important to maintain that alignment between your position as a researcher, the positioning of your research within the field, and your theoretical framework, as well as your methodology, and keep an eye on your timeline. So I think that's it. Thank you for listening to my story.
Nidal, thank you so much for those insights. That was really nice to hear about what you're actually researching, but also your lessons for us. I have a page of notes, particularly things that I wish I'd heard at the start of my doctoral journey. So thank you so much for that, Nidal. If anybody does have any questions or comments, please do put them in the chat box. We're going to move on to hearing from Ruth in Germany, and then we'll have a chance to move into breakout rooms with both Nidal and Ruth to pick up some of these themes a little bit further as well. So Nidal, thank you so much. And Ruth, we'll move over to you. So the platform is yours.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Nidal, I found so much of yours. I found from heart how it is for them. Actually, I started in the beginning of 2020, so shortly before at least I was aware of a COVID-19 pandemic that would hit us. But of course, I already had my my ideas in mind what I wanted to do my research on. So I decided to take a picture of that might represent a bit my doctoral journey and where I am standing so far. So as you can see, it's more a bright and colorful picture. So overall, I'm happy with what I'm doing and what happened and the lessons I learned, also with all the challenges that also Nidal referred to. Yet and I guess most of all, or probably all the doctoral journeys are pretty twisty. There is not a straight way. You start and you go through it and that's it, and there wouldn't be any challenges or something. So as Nidal referred to too, it was challenging to the data collection, to go your plan as worked from the timeline, but also from how you designed what you wanted to implement in your research. But on the other side, it was it is still ongoing, very educational, very colorful. I have a lot of very inspiring moments, also inspiring knowledge that I am allowed to learn from the practitioners, from the field, but also from colleagues, from the networks, such as today. So I really appreciate those chances. And that's also why I want to show some important cornerstones, or like, which lead you way to the back when you maybe lost your track, that I was lucky to have and still am lucky to have, but also that I think are very important for a doctoral journey. So that's on the one side, a supportive supervisor. So if you have the chance to maybe decide yourself who would be your supervisor. I mean, depending on the doctoral conception, that's maybe different, but if you have the chance, I think that's very important to have a supervisor where you can go to if you have thoughts, if you want to discuss something, but then also a broader network such as BELMAS, but also other networks on different levels. I think it's important to have other doctoral candidates or postdocs with whom you can also go through the difficult times, but also share your happy your happy moments. Like sometimes, the first paper published and stuff like that, it's something that I think is important to also share, and also be able to share, because as Nidal said, sometimes it can be very lonely if you are writing your thesis and you did your data collection or something, or you're in the middle of your theory. But then it's important to connect and get out there. And during the current time, it's often virtual, but even that helps a lot in my thought. Another thing that I think is very important to get feedback, because others who are longer in this field, like I am comparably new, so they have a different view, so that can really help a lot too. And then overall, in the end, you need a lot of patience, because it will be a difficult way sometimes, and I guess patience to and the knowledge to go through it, to overcome those also difficult, challenging times is very important. Now there is okay, so just the chat popping up. And I also want to share a little bit of my research topic, but it will really be only a brief overview. And as Nidal said, probably there will still be a lot of changes ongoing, because I'm kind of just in the start, also due to the pandemic, which made it difficult to move on. So where I started is that international school effectiveness research showed that successfully improving schools have something that is also known as data richness. So they use various data, different data for various projects. They know where to get those data or how to get those data, what is important for their improvement, for their improving project, school improvement project, and they also know how to adapt the data into action, like what to do with those data and how to move on. And in this context, leadership has also been understood as an important aspect of effective database school improvement. Now that research has been conducted in different countries, not in Germany. And in Germany, it seems like there is not so much research yet. There is, but it seems like that the schools in Germany hardly seem to practice database school improvement. So although there is the formal demand of database school improvement, schools seem to not really implement that into practice. But as you heard, they are in different institutional settings. So those schools from the International School Effectiveness Research were in different institutional settings than, for instance, those German schools. And I expect that there are also different formal and informal institutional expectations that those schools face. But that's where kind of my research idea comes into action, and I want to analyze. I want to see if there is this kind of thing that the formal and also informal institutional expectations and the contextual situation in which the schools find themselves do have an actual impact on how schools put database school improvement into practice, into action. And I use Meyer and Rowan's neo-institutionalist theory, which very briefly says that the institutional standards and expectations, they can have a tremendous effect on organizational structures, as well as on the implementation of the structures into praxis. So that's very, very briefly only. And I wanna see in a mixed methods design, where the first one is the one I can already share some insights of. The second and third one will be the one that are hopefully going to happen soon. So I firstly conducted a standardized online survey where I invited all the 138, I missed the point. So sorry, I'm quickly going back. So I looked for schools who would be good for analyzing those different institutional settings, but also would be comparable. And that's how I came to German schools abroad, who on the one side are affected from the German institutional setting, but on the other side are affected from all the different other institutional settings of the countries they are located in. So that's where my method started, and I conducted a standardized online survey, which was on the one side, no problem online in COVID-19 pandemic situation. On the other side, of course, also those schools suffered from school closures and other difficulties they had to face. So overall, I did have a comparably low response rate. And I wanted to see, I wanted to have an overview of the institutional expectations those leaders, school leaders, those principals felt in their current school. So depending on the institutional setting. Now, I guess I'm a bit running out of time. Anyhow, I could find clusters, so I could find 3 clusters, those school leaders or principals who reported that the institution, the country where they are located in, demand or expect higher data-based school improvement from them than the German institution. And the other side, the opposite, that the German institution demands more. Also, those schools where it depends on the data, where it's a bit like fuzzy, kind of. But because it's a very small sample, my main data collection will be in an in-depth qualitative study where I then go into interviews with the school leaders, but also with teachers to also understand how school leadership has a role in this whole situation. Yeah, I guess for now, that's it. Thank you for listening.
Ruth, thank you so much for that overview of your research, but also your doctoral journey as well. We can't underestimate the challenges of doing this during COVID-19, but again, I mean, both just having two presentations so far, yourself and Nidal, fascinating to hear about leadership and improvement from different contexts as well, but also some of your great tips and recommendations for those that are maybe new to the doctoral journey or just new to research as well. So thank you so much. There's some comments coming into the chat, and I guess there might be some questions as well. I wonder if anybody, before we move into breakout rooms, we've got about 2 minutes, if anybody did want to ask Nidal or Ruth any questions or just share some of their reflections that have come from listening to Nidal and Ruth. Lisa, I can put you on the spot. No, you've got your hand up already. Excellent. Lisa, over to you for your comment.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, my name's Lisa Reid. I'm based at the University of Dundee. And I've literally just finished my my doctoral study, so I've just completed that. And the one thing that I really appreciated about the two presentations was just highlighting the power of connection and the recognition that it is a really lonely journey. I don't think because I was a school teacher and I kind of thought that I was okay about working on my own, because sometimes as a school teacher you can feel quite isolated, and that you do work in quite a solitary environment, even though you're working with a department of people. And I hadn't realised just how lonely the PhD experience was. And it wasn't until we had the COVID-19 lockdown and that we all connected virtually that we realised just how easy that became and how difficult it had been to do the kind of connections face to face. And my experience of doing the PhD during the lockdowns was a much less lonely experience than perhaps it had been when we had the freedom of movement, which in effect sounds quite bizarre, because you kind of expected it to be the other way around, that lockdown would create an isolation, and for lots of people it did. But my experience of my doctoral study, I was able to connect with a lot of people, and I really greatly appreciated that, and it really shifted my doctoral work along quite a lot. So thank you for raising those, because I think that's one thing that would be one of my major tip points at the beginning of doctoral work. Create the network, get the connections, and meet regularly. So thank you for that.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Lisa. Really important insights, and great to hear from someone that's at the end of that process as well. Nidal or Ruth, did you want to add anything to what Lisa had mentioned there?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa, for sharing this. It's quite inspiring to hear from you, and especially that you have already successfully completed your PhD. I have to say that we do really get sometimes, carried away with other things like teaching and other tasks and jobs and family. And so when we get to sit down and do the work on our PhD project, it feels like quite burdening and it feels quite isolating. But it is through these connections that the journey can be empowering and really can be, colleagues can be very supportive. Maybe that's the only advantage of the pandemic, is that really it brought us from different places, different contexts, brought us together and made that distance really disappear. Thank you for sharing, Lisa.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you, Lisa, for your comment. And in the beginning, I mean, as I said, I started 2020, and when I started, we still could go to the office, but then very quickly we were in working from home situation the whole time. And in the beginning, I was very scared, because I thought, okay, I would never see ever, and how to build a network in this situation when you don't already have one. But I guess reaching out, there are enough, and just contacting them, and then you will get into those networks, and then it will support you. So I guess, yeah, that's something I want to add, because I myself was in the situation that I was really afraid and scared of, that I cannot get any network, because how I cannot just I don't know, contact someone I don't know and say, hello, do you want to join my doctoral research? Like, it's not working like this. But yeah, kind of it is working. Just reach out, look for the networks and connect. I think that's important. Thank you.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Lisa, again. And thank you, Nidal. And thank you, Ruth, for your insights there too. So what we're going to do for about the next 10 minutes is we're going to open up some breakout rooms. Nidal will be in room 1. and Ruth will be in room 2. So if you did want to go and speak to either of them directly about something they'd mentioned, maybe an element of their research or just some of the points they've raised, you'll have the choice to choose either room 1 or room 2. If you have no preference, then feel free to join any room, but this is also an opportunity just for you to be able to connect with others, as we're talking about just now, perhaps share what you're working on just now, where you're coming from, etc., and just have some time to connect with others that are on the call this afternoon. So I'm going to just pause the recording here. So welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed those conversations. I'm just going to pin our panelists back to the screen, and you should be able to see Benjamin now, who's also joining from Hong Kong. He will be our next speaker. And just it is 10 minutes to 1 in the morning in Hong Kong. So a huge thank you, Benjamin, for still being on the line. And thank you so much for sharing your insights in advance. And the platform is yours, Benjamin.
Okay, tonight, I said that tonight, good night. Hello, everyone from all parts of the world. It's my turn to share my experience. I think it is as an opportunity to learn about excellent people that also share the same interest with me in school leadership and management. And in my understanding, I should share my PhD journey, but I did not prepare PowerPoint, but so that you have to hear my story verbally using the sound. Okay. First of all, I born in Hong Kong, and I pursue my PhD also in Hong Kong. Pursuing a PhD in Hong Kong as a Hong Kong people actually is more than a lifestyle choice. I repeat, it's a lifestyle choice instead of a career choice, because you know, Hong Kong University are very competitive in the international ranking system, and the university are very nervous about how they perform, whether they are perform well in align with the international standard, even for the low-tier university in Hong Kong. So that, and also in university in Hong Kong, they have an ability to offer really competitive offer, so that they always have a very global candidate from the top university in US, in UK. And usually this kind of candidate have a nice publication record, so that it's very difficult for a local PhD to compete with the global candidate in Hong Kong. So that even a local PhD in Hong Kong actually cannot guarantee a very stable teaching job in Hong Kong. And as we know, as a global phenomenon, the careers job is very common in higher education as well. So it is sometimes for me, it's more about a life choice or a calling to pursue a PhD in Hong Kong. But actually there's a long gap between I pursue my master and my PhD. Pursue PhD, I explore about 5 to 7 years, and during my exploitation, okay, after my finish my master, I'm thinking what I want to do, and during the exploitation, I meet one professor from Faculty of Education. She is maybe you'll hear them because she is Professor Paula Guan. She is a very active researchers in education leaderships, and she is a student of Professor Alan Walker actually, and also she published good journals. But on the other hand, she is a key practical contributors in providing leadership training to our Hong Kong principal, Hong Kong school board members, Hong Kong senior teachers. So I meet them, and I found that it's very interesting because she designed the training program for our Hong Kong government education department, so that every principal, every school board members have to undergo her training. Okay, and I help him, and at that time I found that it is a less developed area and exploit the area to practically to design a leadership program, a training program, a continuous training program for the real education practitioners. And she, because of that, she also have a good network with the principal, with the school board member, with the government official. And so that she have a lot of network for them for she to do the research. So at that time, I think that it is something that I want to do. So at that time, I would like to commit to the process of, okay, help them to professionalize the training program, the leadership training program in Hong Kong. But the key is, okay, they need something, people with a PhD program, degree. Is a PhD degree holder to master this thing, so that I have to pursue a PhD. So I apply a PhD program for that reason. Of course, because this is not a career choice, I think that is meaningful. So that maybe it's not a career choice. So I applied PhD, but I think at that time when I pursue PhD, I think that what I need to do is I would like to contribute to the professionalization of the Hong Kong education sectors, from the school board member level, principal level, vice principals, head teachers. And so I decided to apply a PhD in the same department, because I come from sociology. I'm not come from faculty of education, but I apply a PhD in sociology just because one reason, because I can exempt all the course, because I already pursue a master program. I already take all the courses, so that I can have much time to do what I want to do. Secondly, I apply a government scholarship at that time, and I successfully apply it, so that I can exempt all the teaching duty as a PhD student. And finally, my PhD supervisor, I also told Anna, she is a John Mayer student. John Mayer is a Stanford scholar who his interest is about, at that time, collecting curriculum textbook from all over the world. So that in Stanford Faculty of Education, there is a team of scholars who do research on textbook. And my supervisor is one of them. And it's something that only can do by a team, but I'm not his team, her team. So she did not really intervene what I do. I can do the research about school leadership. She have no comment on that, but she cannot help him. But she can emotionally support me, and we develop a trustful relationship. I will perform minimally, so that it will not cause trouble to her, and she will sometimes give some feedback, but not much useful, because he's not really in the field. And he also, because of this, I can graduate with a PhD thesis within 3 years. It's a very short period of time, but it's a minimally meet the requirement. And but I use all the spare time to collaborate with the professor I met, and that I guaranteed a postdoc job. And actually, the postdoc job is not really about the. Of course, I will have to do research, evaluative research on the leadership program I decide, or I and my supervisor, my boss, co-decide the program. I have to do some evaluative research on that. And so so that I immediately I get a full-time job after my completion of my PhD. So that's why if some people who kick me in my LinkedIn, you find them I'm not really update my LinkedIn, because I'm no LinkedIn to find a job. So that my LinkedIn is sometimes is abundant at the moment. But but it is something that I think that is very interesting and useful. But during the past 2 years, Hong Kong experienced something, so that in education sector, especially in the education department, they have more and more instruction or requirement on the school leadership programs. Sometimes I and also my supervisor will quite disappointed, because for some requirement is justifiable, but some requirement maybe we see that it may be is disrespectful to our education practitioner. This is not really respect our professional judgment, because we as a teacher, it's a profession, we have a professional judgment to do that. So it's something that is the story is that maybe at the moment I and my supervisor still continue to participate in some program, But now we are now searching for some new interests. For example, the leadership, maybe we are turning about the curriculum leadership, distributed leadership, focus on more on the team leader level. Or also we also collect a database, a questionnaire, because we at the convenience of the service provider of the leadership program, we do a census survey of school board members, and it's a questionnaire. So we are now stop doing the practical professional development at the moment, but we are now become more research oriented, maybe try to contribute to the global knowledge of school leadership, school management at the moment, because time is because at the moment it's not the right time to put our idea into practice. Maybe so that's now I'm here to share what my experience is and share with our global colleagues. If you are interested in what, for example, our design of how to have a continuous development framework or model for principal, for board member, for vice principal, okay, the Hong Kong experience, okay, you can find me, and of course, I also will share you. And finally, I just add one more point. For the publication, some people, occasionally, I also write some research paper and get published. But I always think that of course, your thesis is very important. Your PhD thesis is very important. But when you get paper published, sometimes you invest a lot of time on a small topic. For example, at that time, I write a paper on school governance structure in Hong Kong. I read all the legal paper, and also I do the some interview and new analysis. It's not my PhD thesis, but it soon get published. So that sometimes, of course, it's nice for your PhD thesis to get published, but if you invest enough time, substantial time, and you always can find new things, and that new thing, and you share with your colleagues, and then you will soon find the value of it, and then soon get published. So that sometimes our PhD student will always stick with our PhD thesis, but sometimes luxury, okay, you will find something that you can have a sort of hobbies beside your PhD thesis. You have some hobby topic and do it. And it's a way for me to get a leisure time, is a leisure beside my PhD thesis. Okay, that's what I would like to share at the moment. Okay, thanks. Okay, I pass it to Paul. Okay.
Thank you so much, Benjamin, for sharing those insights. It's really exciting to hear as well. Obviously, you've completed your PhD and what you've moved on to afterwards as well. It's been really nice to hear, especially that last point. I found that really resonated with me there about the further interest you might develop throughout the doctoral journey as well as afterwards as well. Some really exciting possibilities. So thank you so much, Benjamin, for sharing that and for doing it so eloquently at 1 o'clock in the morning as well. So thank you very much. I think Andrew is having some technical difficulties accessing. So what I thought we could do just now was if anybody had any questions or any insights, whether it's for Benjamin or if you wanted to pick up any themes further, now is a perfect time to do that. So, Andrew's just popped in. But if anybody does have any questions, the floor is yours just now. I just think it's quite interesting reflecting on what Nidal, Ruth and Benjamin have shared so far. I think we can see some quite strong themes of the importance of networking and collaboration. We've talked already about collaboration with other colleagues that are researchers or early career researchers, but I think it was nice to hear what Benjamin was talking about as well in terms of collaboration with other academics and researchers within the faculties we're working in as well. What's been really nice to hear as well is the moving beyond what we might have traditionally understood as the research practice divide, which I think is maybe a bit of a redundant way of looking at it. It's much more nuanced than that. And I think what we've heard from the experience of those that have been sharing today is that actually it's this dynamic and changing interplay between policy, practice and research, which has been really nice and really insightful, I think, to hear not just how that influences research choices, but how research develops and grows, how interests grow and change as well, and what impact looks like too. So thank you so much to our three presenters so far. And now we're going to pass over to Andrew. Andrew, we're looking forward to hearing your insights as well. If there's any connection issues, don't worry at all. We'll work around that. But the platform is yours, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. Everybody can hear me? Great, great. I just disconnected from my laptop. Right now I'm using my phone. So just in case my laptop behaves, I will switch on to my laptop. But right now I'll use my laptop. I will use my phone to do my presentation. If my laptop was working right now, I would have shared my presentation today. But I will share through the. Actually, it has gone off, and but nevertheless, I will go on. So my name is Andrew Wambua. I am a passionate Kenyan educator and a researcher, currently pursuing my doctoral program at the University of Heidelberg in Germany. Sometime in 2018, I thought of starting my doctoral journey. And surprisingly, I chose to do this one in Germany, a country whose official language is Germany, a country which does not recognize African languages in a way, in such a way that in Kenya we use the official languages. The official languages in Kenya are English and Swahili. So it was like a risk which I took to do it in German. But I wanted to learn, explore, and learn how the world thinks, and that is the reason as to why I decided to do my doctorate at the University of Heidelberg in Germany. So in 2018, I started my journey of my doctoral journey. And I remember vividly my first flight to Germany. When I landed in Germany, I never knew anything of the German language, but I was so much determined to pursue my doctoral program. That is from September 2018. Currently, I'm in my third year of, that is my final year of my doctoral journey. My dissertation topic is on leading for improvement and collaborative professionalism in schools in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. That is, I am covering Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, that is the East African countries. And I came to collect data sometime in early next year, hoping to go back in 2019, something which never happened. Because immediately I came to Kenya in January, I went to Morocco to do a presentation, to attend a congress by the name International Congress for School Effectiveness and Improvement. And once I was done with my presentation, I came back again from Morocco to Kenya, hoping to go back in Germany sometime in April. It never happened because sometimes in March, COVID-19 was declared a pandemic. And through such, I could not travel to Germany because of the traveling issues and all that kind of a thing. And I went and thought deep about my research. And what came to my mind was, what can you do? Right now, you are in Kenya when you are supposed to be in Germany. What can you do to do your research? What can you continue doing to ensure that you do a great job? And I kept on thinking about this until I thought about a guy by the name Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton is sometime in 1665 to 1666 is when he was faced, that is the time when England was faced by a pandemic by the name bubonic plague. That is between 1665 to 1666. England was faced by this pandemic by the name bubonic plague, which actually led to the deaths of around 15% of the population in England. And it is during this time that Isaac Newton came up with several discoveries, key among them, discovery of force of gravity, discovery of of calculus, and many other discoveries. So between 1665 and 1666, Isaac Newton discovered so much in his work. Actually, he describes the time of the year of the discovery as Annus Mirabilis. That is a year of wonder, because it is during this time that he came to discover the calculus. It is during that year that he came to discover the force of gravity when he was under quarantine. So that came to made me to think big, to think broad on what can we do as leaders, as education leaders. What can we do different? Because right now we are not having. Right now we have the advantage of technology, which Isaac Newton never had that time. So I went deeper and thought, what can we do to strengthen our research? What can we do to strengthen our focus? What can we do to bring change across the globe? And that is when I started connecting more, interacting more, engaging more. And I interacted with several organizations, one of them being the International Congress for School Effectiveness and Improvement. The second one is Africa Voices Dialogue, which I co-founded. I am one of the co-founders of Africa Voices Dialogue with a professor from Morocco by the name Abdelaziz Zori and a researcher from South Africa by the name Robin Whitaker. We came together and said, why can't we come up with something which is going to revolutionize, which is going to evolutionize education in Africa? And we came up with this organization by the name Africa Voices Dialogue. Besides that, I engaged more with an organization like Catalyst 2030, which is a global movement which factors on SDGs. And of course, the SDG number 4 was very key to me, which talks about inclusivity, which talks about equity, which talks about quality education. So in Catalyst 2030, I joined Catalyst 2030 to network more and understand some of these wicked problems in education, key among them, inclusivity, inequalities, school improvement. Those are some of the key inequalities. Those are some of the wicked challenges which are facing education. So we came together and when I joined the Catalyst 2030, we have been talking about some of these challenges, some of these wicked challenges, which we can depend on to improve our education systems across the world, not only in Africa, but across the world. So since I would say the COVID-19 period, that is 2020 and 2021, to me is a wonder, is Annus Mirabilis, because I was locked in Kenya when I was supposed to be in Germany by 1st of April 2020. But I could not travel because of the international restrictions. And I thought big, I connected more, I interacted more, I engaged more to co-found Africa Voices Dialogue, to be a member of International Congress for School Effectiveness and Improvement, where I am serving as early career coordinator under the network of Educational Leadership Network, which Paul Campbell chairs. So I work very closely with Paul. And I also went ahead and joined Catalyst 2030, which specializes on which tries to achieve the SDGs, the 17 SDGs. But of course, I'm focusing on SDG number 4, which talks about quality, inclusive, talks about quality, equity, and inclusive education across the globe. Then later I joined Catalyst 2030, and I am serving as a Catalyst co-facilitator, the Kenyan chapter. So to me, COVID-19 has been a blessing in disguise. And when you talk about the opportunities which lie ahead, they are many for us. And I remember during the session, when we were about to start the session, we said that we need to keep this going. We need to interact more. This panel the keynote speakers today and the participants, the audience today, we need to take it even further and discuss how can we collaborate more, because we would like to create a community of practice. That is, this community of practice is going to bring together researchers, is going to bring together practitioners, is going to bring together policymakers, and at the end goal is to create a community of practice whereby we can conduct mentorship programs, whereby we can conduct seminars, whereby we can conduct workshops, and whereby this community of practice can extend across the globe. It can be in Africa, it can be in New Zealand, it can go to Australia, it can go to South America and even North America. So that should be our goal. How can we strengthen our community of practice starting from today and become better educators, become better policymakers, become better researchers, and become better practitioners? Because the end goal is for us to unite and discuss the wicked challenges which are facing education. And we all agree that some of these wicked challenges which are affecting education, key among them is school improvement, key among them is inclusivity, key among them is quality, and key among them is equality. So if we come together, I do believe that we can look for solutions, we can collaborate more, and maybe identify a kind of a research area which we can pursue together. I understand some of us are pursuing doctoral programs, others are done with their doctoral programs. But the question is, how can we strengthen this community? How can we build a strong, diverse community of practice which brings together educators, and talking about educators, I'm talking about which brings together policymakers, which brings together researchers, which brings together practitioners. Because this decade and beyond, I would say education is going to change. The definition of the term schooling is completely going to change. Conventionally, we have been talking about schooling taking place in those buildings within schools. But in the next 5 years, probably my thinking is we are going to have a hybrid kind of teaching and learning, whereby the students who are at home can as well be taught, whereby students who are in their respective locations can be taught. So this is a battle decade. I would call it a battle decade, whereby everything is going to change and so much is going to happen. And we should be prepared because COVID-19 caught us off guard. We have to agree. COVID-19 caught us off guard, and we were skilled in so many ways. And that is why we talked about schools across the globe being closed down. And what did it mean? When schools were closed, remember, these schools were offering protective covers to students. When the students were forced to study from their homes, they were abused sexually, they were abused emotionally, they were abused physically. So the question is, what we learned from these challenges? I believe that can create a community of practice which is going to refine education for the better.
Thank you so much, Andrew. What a lovely note to end our contributions on. I think you've given us both a call to action, but what's been lovely in connecting both your contribution there and Benjamin's earlier is this idea of whether it's a research journey, whether it's a career in education, it's less a career choice and more a calling, a passion. I think you've really ignited a fire, I think, Andrew, with your closing comments there about the transformative power of education and research and what we can do with that. So thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you for your call to action as well. And I'm excited to see what we can do with this energy and with the possibilities that come from not just our research individually, but actually the network and the collaboration that we've exemplified today as well. So thank you so much, Andrew, for that. So We've got about 15 minutes to go. And what I thought would be nice to do is just to spend the remaining time. If anybody has any questions or comments, either for Benjamin or Andrew, but also for Nidal or Ruth, again, any insights as well, any connections you've made to your own work, your own experience, your own research, it would be great to hear from all of those that are on the call as well. So I'm going to open up the platform to those that are in attendance. And of course, if anybody wants to jump in, anybody in the panel as well to maybe respond to some points too, it'd be great to hear from you. So any questions to start with? Okay, I'm going to open it up to the panel. Oh, Nidal, excellent. Good timing.
Yeah, thank you. I thought I'll wait, but I'm really interested in two comments. I would start with Andrew. I think it was absolutely fantastic to hear this call to action and also the thinking about the wider impact of research. So thinking about social impact, educational impact, and taking research goals even further to change lives and change societies. So it was really, really interesting and very inspiring hearing from you. And my second note to Benjamin, thank you very much for sharing your story. It was quite interesting. And I have to pick up on the last note you mentioned on the publications, because we know when, as PhD students, we dig very deep into a specific topic, a very specific area, and we spend quite a few years researching that. But it doesn't mean that we do not grow research interests around the topic. So it doesn't necessarily have to be always within that topic. And I've heard advice from older professors and advisors saying that, oh, absolutely no, you need to always focus, work and research and teach within your specific field because the world needs specialists. And after these few years I've spent in research, I would say, well, the world also needs generalists, needs people who not only know the very specific area they're working in, but also how that relates to other areas. And I think that links to my, or what you mentioned exactly, linked to my passion to interdisciplinarity. So I do believe that we have the right to, not the right, but really the call to connect our research to wider areas. And I think that would be a great insight. If I want to probably collaborate with all of you, I would like to call you, to all of you, the attendance today. I don't want to really take a lot of the time. I know others might have comments, but just the last note. So it would be great if you could carry on some further discussions or further, and thank you everyone who shared their email addresses. Off to you, Paul.
I would like to make a quick response. I agree with you. If you are really talk to the real frontline practitioner, you will tend to be an interdisciplinary. And I share something. In my postdoc study, I would like to carry out a research. Actually, it's a research very easy because Hong Kong University do a lot of research on education. There is education psychology research, there is education leadership research, there is curriculum research. But they are all published in the top journal in English. But the frontline practitioner in Hong Kong, they study them, but they don't know the paper that research themselves them. So that I would like to do a small focus group. For example, this is a language teacher. And as a researcher, I make a summary of all, for example, language research within these 10 years to make a quick summary and to have a group of language teachers, talk to them and to see whether this research finding can help them for their language, their classroom teaching. And so that is a better distribution of the knowledge, the research knowledge into the real school settings. So that I would like to do many small focus group, some for language teachers, some for school leaders, some for curriculum planners. Okay, I just summarize all the research that is done in Hong Kong and distribute the research result to them, and it's already very useful to them. But for our research side, it is something that can become a publication, a paper, because you use Hong Kong, to use a places, you have to do a systematic summary based on one certain region, but they study deeply, and it is itself is already another publication. But this publication also help the frontline teachers. And it is something that I talk to the frontline teachers and know, okay, what the frontline teachers, what is their concern, what is their worries. And I always link what our, as a researcher in university, can help them. We did a lot of things, but that thing maybe the frontline teacher even don't know. They don't know they are being researched. They don't know their research already published in the their classroom teaching, or this kind of research already published in the journal. I just tell them it already is an achievement. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Nidal and Benjamin. Great to have those insights. Was there any other questions or comments from anyone else? I think and anyone feel free to please do jump in. I think I'm finding the conversation quite interesting, that is explicitly been touched upon, but also kind of implicitly as well, mentioned about this connection between what the relationship between whether it's doctoral or postgraduate research and research beyond that, and the connection to or the impact on or influence over practice. And I think this is something that's, I think, quite interesting. I know there's some on the call, some are on PhD programs, some are on EdD programs as well. And how EdD programs, for example, are conceptualized around the world can be very, very different. Some where they're just much more aligned to a typical PhD program, just with a toy element at the start, whereas others are looking much more about what the impact and implications are for practice. And I think that I'd be interested to hear people's perspectives. I'm thinking about the amazing insights that have been offered today, but particularly this idea of how powerful education research and research within the context of educational leadership can be. But actually, for it to have impact, what a second supervisor has always told me is a dangerous word, because how do you measure it, and can it actually have impact or not? So maybe influence I'll add in there as well. Actually, what would the forms of research engagement, as well as dissemination, knowledge exchange, who are our knowledge brokers within the system? How do we actually mobilize these ideas? And is it about actually just disseminating, or is there a way we can rethink the, I suppose, ecological dimension of research engagement? I know there's been some great work at Northwestern in Chicago, I think it is, that looks at the social ecology of research engagement, both for policymakers and practitioners. I think there's some really interesting insights that can be coming out from some of the experiences today about, right, well, we're engaging in this significant and important research, but how do we actually get to a point where this can be something that makes a significant contribution, but also then feeds into what further research might look like? I don't know if anybody has any insights or connections or ideas to this idea of what research engagement or research impact means to them, or what they're thinking about in their context in relation to that. Lisa, it'd be great to hear from you.
Yeah, it's really interesting that we're talking about this, and I think it's really important, because I have to admit that during my doctoral work, that I would often shirk away from discussions over it. That if someone said, "Oh, what is your PhD on?" I go, "Oh, you don't really want to know." That I almost hid and felt security in the written element of the PhD. And that I didn't really pay a great deal of attention into the public engagement afterwards. That the PhD and the doctoral work was for a thesis, but not for me. And there was personal reasons for wanting to do it, and the impact of practice on me was one of the driving factors. The public engagement of it wasn't something that I ever really explored or considered in a great deal. And I find now that I have it, I'm really in awe of everyone who is part of these networks whilst they're exploring their PhD, because as once having it, I felt a validation to go and say, this is what I've done. I needed that process of the Viva to somehow validate that what my thinking was, and that it was okay, and that it was, I don't know if I'm really explaining myself very well. And I think that it would be really interesting, and it'd be very good that part of the public engagement and the dissemination of the work is at the beginning and is central in the doctoral process, that actually, where does your research sit in terms of its impact on practice, and how are you going to disseminate it? So even though I've got my sections at the end of my chapter 6, like everybody else will have or has had, you know, what are my recommendations for practice? What are my recommendations for future research? There isn't a section in there what is my recommendation for public engagement of this thesis? And part of me now wishes that I had considered that, and the ways that I could take the sheer volume of the work that goes into the thesis, and how I could consider, how do I simplify and disseminate that publicly so that people can access it without me just dropping a tome of a book on their desk and saying, this is what it is. So I especially the discussions by Benjamin and Andrew in the second section, this idea about this way of we're engaging and this, you know, this pull to the community to practice is I think really important.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lisa.
Kind of reflective.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those reflections. It's great to hear that at the end as well. Jane, you're coming from an ED experience. It'd be great to hear from you as well.
Yeah. I mean, firstly, I think we probably all suffer from, I don't want to talk about my research because it sounds really boring and everybody else's sounds way more exciting than my own. But coming from my experiences on the ED, all the way through, it's about situating the research within practice and then disseminating it to practice. We probably also have the advantage or disadvantage that our word limit is seriously small. So, you know, my word limit for my ED is something like 65,000. So actually, there's also then that sense that you're not putting that huge document, you're actually having to put it into something that you can say to people in practice, well, actually, here you go. So with all of us, it's very much not what just is the impact of this research, but what is the impact of this research on practice? So for me, with mine, it is, what is the impact of this on independent schools, and then leading out from there, appraisal in general. So as I say, I don't know if that makes a big difference.
Yeah, thank you. I think that there's one point I want to add. There is, I always told people, thesis is only written usually by 5 people only in the world. You and your supervisor and also your WIFA member. But how can you distribute, making your thesis is more valuable to more people is another thing. Thesis is 5 people only. You can entertain 5 people in order to have a PhD. But in order to let your research have real impact and have collect to more people, you need to do extra work. But it is maybe this kind of research is very valuable. Okay, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those insights, Lisa, Jane, and Benjamin as well. I think there's lots of what I'm really excited about is the call to action as a result of our conversations today, which I think is really exciting. We are at the end of our time, so can I start off by saying a huge thank you to all of our speakers and all of our attendees as well, the community that I think has been felt today, this evening, this afternoon, wherever we are in the world. It's been really, really exciting. I think the emphasis on networking is what I've noted down, but also the various further interests that might develop and grow throughout our doctoral and postgraduate journey, and also the role of reflection and connection with others, I think has come across really, really clear. I'm going to flash on the screen for you some other ways if you do want to remain connected with BELMAS and further opportunities to connect with the broader community. There's lots of opportunities for you to do that, whether it's through the research interest groups. There's always scope if you wanted to create your own research interest group as well, which I think there could be. There's a doctoral one already. Perhaps there's others that we're thinking about too. Feel free to have a look at them and think about how you might want to engage. BELMAS has a range of funding and awards as well, open to new researchers and established researchers as well, context of practice and context of research. And of course, BELMAS publications, EMA, a very well-known journal, and so is MIE. And I want to particularly highlight Management and Education Journal, not just because I'm on an editorial board, but also because they have a range of publication routes in there that are not just accessible for new researchers, but a really exciting means of reaching a further audience as well, like we've just been talking about. So I'd actively encourage you to have a look at that. And just finally, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for joining. The recording will be available shortly after in the next few days, and we hope to connect with you again very, very soon. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to our presenters. Thank you especially to Benjamin for staying up until 1:30 in the morning, and we'll connect again soon. All the best, everyone.